Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. This is your host, Jamie Clarkson. Let's find your major. In today's episode, I'm going to tell you all about who I am, what this show is, and then we're going to have our very first guest. But first off, I want to thank you for tuning in to the first episode of the Major Podcast. This is a project that I have been working on for a few months, and I am so excited to see it come to life. So why did I make this podcast? Well, picture this. I was a senior in high school looking at different colleges and degree programs. I knew that I wanted to attend Ohio University, but I didn't know what I wanted to study. I didn't even know it would be realistic for me. I had always assumed I would major in English because, in all reality, it was one of the few majors that I could even identify. I knew that Ohio University had a great journalism program, so I applied just to see what would happen, knowing that it was selective and I probably wouldn't make the cut. In my mind, journalism was for people who went to fancy schools in big cities, not for people like me. But a few weeks later, I got the letter. I was in. When I started attending OU main campus, I was absolutely blown away by the opportunity there was for study. I met people who were majoring in things like aviation management, anthropology, and interior architecture. I had no idea these fields even existed. I was surprised by the depth of my very own major. I had no clue what to expect. Where I came from, most people who were college-bound majored in the same 2 or 3 things because these were the only things we really saw. Not only was I blown away by the amount of things a person could study, I was blown away by how accessible the majors were. You don't have to have a special upbringing or a prestigious high school education to pursue certain fields. Anyone can choose to study law. Anyone can choose to study medicine. Anyone can be a journalist. As kids, we were all told that we could be anything we wanted when we grew up. But what does that mean? I created this podcast to show people exactly what it means to do anything. I want to give people a realistic view of what is out there and what field is best for them. Each episode, I'll bring on a new guest from a different and unique major to talk about their experience and what they study. I hope this gives my audience a realistic perspective on the college experience, and I hope that I can steer some of you in the right direction. So, with that, let's get started. Today we are here with my friend Max Huston, a senior studying games and animation. In his major, he has become both an artist and an engineer of sorts. Among many things, he has studied the history, industry, and production of animation and executed his knowledge in real-world work. So, welcome, Max.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. And before we start, I just want to tell everyone that this podcast may not have happened if it wasn't for Max. He has taught me everything about podcasting and technology in general.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Everywhere. Absolutely. All right. So let's start out with some basic information. So what's your major?
I am a major in game design and animation. I also have a double major, but that's not important.
We're not talking about the other major, at least not today.
Mm-hmm.
So we're focusing on games and animation today. So when people are looking at majors, they typically go for end game. You know, like what job is this going to get me? Where am I going to be in 20 years if I major in this? So, you know, I think the name itself suggests kind of what it does, but can you give us like a brief overview of the different opportunities there are at the end of the road?
Yeah. So as a game design animation major, you can emphasize on 2 very different ends of the spectrum. There's like the game design portion, which also has a more expansive thing as well. So like with the game design portion, you have like game artists and game world designer, level designer, stuff like that. But you also have game programmer, VR artists, stuff like that. Or you can go the animation route, which is like 2D animation, 3D animation, and all that jazz. And it's really interesting how you think it's like a narrow path, but it's so expansive. Like coming into it, I was like, oh, I want to work on movies. But now I'm like,
right, there's so much to do.
Being here, getting all the experience that I have, like the eventual end path I thought I wanted was, you know, movies. How to Train Your Dragon was like a huge inspiration for me. But then when I got here, I kind of fell in love with world design. So like creating the worlds. I don't necessarily like coding that much because I don't like it. It's not fun for me personally. But I like to create world. So like
Mm-hmm.
making the little tiny trees, or like every bright blade of grass that
Right.
goes into like a field that animates on its own and like blows with wind. That's like where my
Mm-hmm.
that's my what's the word? Niche.
Yeah.
Niche.
So, from what I'm getting from what you're saying is, you don't love the technical side of it, but you love the artistic side of it.
If you know me in real life, you know that I'm a very creative person.
Yeah.
With coding and technicalities and stuff like that, I think the reason that I don't love it is because I didn't start it early enough.
Right.
I don't know what other people's experiences would be with coding and stuff like that if they're interested in it. But coming into the major, I have only ever coded for like web design, and it's a different language to code for games. It's coming in with web design. I only knew HTML, which I'm not even going to get into that. But I had to learn C# for game design, and they didn't offer a class for me for that until senior year, or actually junior year. So I didn't learn coding until this past year.
Right.
And that's something that I wish I would have started earlier, because maybe I could have fallen in love with it. But I just got thrown into the fire, and I was like...
So would you suggest, you can only speak to your perspective at your particular university, but like generally speaking, would you suggest that somebody going into this major program do some work with coding on their own before going in, or just rely on the school?
I would suggest learning some on your own, absolutely, because I think the only saving grace for me is that I have coded for other things before,
right?
And so like I knew like the basics of what lines were and opening and closing and that kind of stuff like that. But other than that, I was completely lost. I had a friend in the class who was so lost that she went on and she had taught herself through YouTube, and she supplemented her classwork with YouTube and like online tutorials and stuff like that to teach her way through, because she also had never had any stuff like that before. So I think that it takes a lot of out of work and preparation. But if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it's worth it. I think the major program here, games and animation, is like splitting within the next 3 years too. So they're going to be two separate majors.
Oh, so it'll be like animation and then games?
Yeah.
Two different majors?
Like the games program, I think, is going to be combining with the IT department or something like that. So you get more of that technical stuff as well, which is really cool, I think.
Awesome. So, let's see, you mentioned going on YouTube and like watching tutorials on your own. So how much do you say out of class that you have to study kind of on your own? Equal parts?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So like the amount of time that I spend in the class time, I like to spend about the same amount on like websites that teach that kind of stuff. Right. Or here at Ohio University, we only learn, I believe it's Unity for game design and putting stuff together. There's two main players in like the game design world, which is Unity and Unreal Engine, I think is what it's called. And here we only teach Unity. So in order for me to like be a well-rounded person in like the games animation field, I need to also be able to use Unreal. Right. So I had to teach myself that program completely on my own, because they won't teach it here because of like program deals and that kind of sponsorships and such. So I have to, in order for me to be like a marketable person, I have to teach myself how to use two different programs, like different modeling softwares, different coding softwares, and it's a lot of work on your own, especially like if you are a game artist like me. You not only have to like create all the art and stuff yourself, but you also have to create the game platform itself. Right. And I've made, I think, 2 games so far on my own with no help.
Right.
They're beautiful and I love them. They are my children. Don't at me.
My children.
They're very like neon. I love them.
So with that, can you talk to me a little bit about like the work that you've done? Like any extracurriculars, any like solo work that you've done with your education? So
like extracurriculars in the sense of anything I do outside of the major, or relative to the major? Relative to the major. Okay. So relative to the major, I actually don't think I've done any extracurriculars that were tied to it, other than I was part of the, what is that called? The research fair, I think is what it's called. Right. I'm not sure exactly what that is, what it was called, but yeah. We had a group project where we had to do a presentation about a project that we worked on, and we worked on an animation, and I think it was called Wizard Lizards or something like that. and it was about Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
But if the characters were lizards in a pet shop.
Oh, that's funny.
It was adorable, and I loved it. But it was a lot of pressure, and all three of us were artists on it, and we all had different styles. So it was very difficult to work.
Mm-hmm.
I was supposed to be like the art lead, but we all had clashing ideals.
Right.
So that's one thing that I think if you're going to be in this major, you have to be able to, not only be able to, but you need to take the time to be in other extracurriculars because you need to develop that ability to work as a team.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have to be able to be a leader, but also not be a leader. You have to be able to do both, because if you can't, like, take somebody else's criticism, or somebody else's more talented than you and they're above you, you need to be able to adapt to work with them, because if you can't, you're not going to make any headway in this major or in this career path, because you like it is a team thing. There are teams of anywhere from like 3 to 4 to like 80 people working on a game, and you need to be able to communicate with all of them.
Mm-hmm. So how, like, when you're working in a group and you guys have different art styles, how do you like establish what you're going to use? Do you find middle ground, or do you just adapt to one person's style? How does that work?
So how we did it is how I would recommend you don't do it. I was supposed to be like the art lead, art head kind of thing. So I designed the characters, and then I was supposed to teach them how to like draw them and make them into, like, not necessarily make them into my style and stuff like that, but make it to where it's still kind. You can see that there's different stylizations, but they all have the same cohesiveness. They did not adhere to that, and making it all the same style is really hard without putting all of the work on one person.
Right.
For 2D animation specifically, because this wasn't a 3D animation. It was all like think Tom and Jerry, that kind of stuff.
So like old fashioned, kind of classic looking.
And so like the style, that's what I was going for, because D&D and old and that kind of stuff. But with the way that the art works, and me, I have a background in art. I have 2 degrees in art and stuff like that. So the way I draw is a lot more technical and a lot more structured, if that makes sense. The way that the other 2 artists drew was very not. And so like it was really hard to make everything look the same, and in the end it didn't. Like you could tell who did what, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it could have been better. And I think that the way that needs to be done is everybody needs to sit down and work together and see who can do what, and in the sense that in a small team, one person should be ahead of the drawing and the animating, or somebody should make the characters. We designated one of the people in our team to only work on animating them, so like adding joints and puppet pins to the characters. That way they can move without actually working on the artwork. That way it's less
less conflict.
Yeah. It's a lot of difficult stuff. One person elected herself as the mom of the group, and it was a mess.
Yeah. Interesting. So I'm going to bounce back just a little bit. A few questions ago, you mentioned something about marketability and being able to like adapt to different programs. So what other elements do you think is important to the marketability of somebody who is majoring in this to like go out in the work world and find a job?
One of the things that I've learned, not necessarily because I am like not super great at what I do, but it's a lot better to be an A personality and a B level animator or game designer than it is to be an A-level game designer with a B personality.
Right.
So you need to be able to be personable. You need to be able to work on a team, because nobody wants to work with that stuck-up person who thinks they're the best at everything that they do.
Exactly. And that's something that I've encountered like in my own experience is people who are hiring people want to hire people that they want to work with.
Exactly.
You
don't want to work with the person who puts on their headphones, ignores you, and then like whenever they tell you what to do or something like that, you decide, well, I didn't think that was right, and I did it my way. That's not how things get done, and that's not how things are going to work. You need to be flexible and adaptable. That's one of like the biggest things that I've taken away. You also need to be able to communicate. Like communication is key. and you need to be able to, how do you say, you need to be able to lead, but you also need to be able to, take a step back and be willing to be led, which is, I think, interesting.
All right. Sorry, no.
You're good.
We covered a lot of the questions that I had going. So going off of that, through your education, have you developed like any secondary skills that you weren't really going in to learn, like any business skills, anything like that?
I mean, yes, I think. One of the things that I knew coming into the program was that I was more art heavy person and stuff like that. I was coming into it thinking, I'm just going to do animations for movies and stuff like that and blah, 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 blah. And as I've grown through the program, one of the skills I learned is like special effects animation. So like fire or like creating laser beams and stuff like that. And I've also picked up motion graphics and stuff like that, like infographics, but like animated for like presentations and things like that. And that's not something that I really thought of being in the program. I thought it would be more like, animating for games, movies, TV. But I didn't think of like animating and such for teaching as like a thing. And that's also kind of how I fell into like my current career path is my plan is to go on to be a higher education professor. And that's a skill that is very useful because teaching with the ability to engage. And that's something that I've learned as well is if you're boring, it's not gonna be interesting.
Right.
That's like the opposite of boring. So.
All right. So we've talked a little bit about like end game, big picture things. I kind of want to move on to like the major itself, taking classes, different requirements. So like, what are some of the requirements that at least you have for your major here?
In the games animation program, let me backtrack that just a little bit. So in order to be a games animation major, you have to first be it's a pre-media arts and studies major.
Right, because it's in the School of Media Arts and Studies.
Yeah, so you can't be a games animation major until your sophomore year of college.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so
you
have to complete your first year as a pre-media arts and studies major, and then after that you have to apply again for either games animation, I think screenwriting, video production, audio production, that kind of stuff. But you have to complete a full year of pre-media arts and studies. You have to pass with a C or better in most of your classes, and you have to have a certain GPA before you're even allowed to be in the major. And then once you get into the major, the classes are kind of strange. You're required to have a corollary or a minor. So a minor, is everybody knows what a minor is. But
it's like a specialization. It's like a abbreviated kind of. So like there's a major and that has like your slew of classes, but that comes with your slew of general education classes. So you're taking your classes for your major. So that's, core classes, any specialization classes, any electives pertaining to that particular major. And then there are your general education, which is like a math and English, things
foreign
like
language, stuff like that.
Yeah, but with a minor, you're just taking those particular classes for that.
Yeah, and typically a minor is not in your same area of study.
Yeah.
So like, I know somebody whose minor is music, but they are a English major.
Right.
Kind of thing. But like here, you're required to have a corollary, which is, I think it's 21 or 12 credit hours. I can't remember because I'm kind of dyslexic. But 21 or 12 credit hours in another major area of focus that is not in the School of Media Arts and Studies or Scripps College of Communication. You are not allowed to have a corollary in the media school or the journalism school or anything like that, which is really weird to me because coming into a games animation, I wanted my corollary to be journalism and video production. So like, tie it all together and that kind of thing, but you're not allowed to do that apparently. However, the corollary, there's also like requirements that certain amount of the credit hours have to be at the 3,000 level or above. So you can't, you have to, that kind of stuff. But I found out that where I've done my different majors at a different college, some of those credits will transfer here. And so I went to talk to my academic advisor and she's like, well, we looked at this and you're actually done with 2 minors here. And I'm like, oh,
Oh my gosh,
great.
that's so funny.
So I didn't even have to do any of my corollary classes.
Mhm.
So I'm a game design animation major with a corollary in English and it's not graphic design, visual communications. That's what
Oh,
it is.
really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so like, your boy likes to collect
He likes to collect pieces of paper, certificates.
Like, I have 2 associate's degrees,
Yeah.
2 minors, and a double majoring here.
And for anybody listening who doesn't know Max, he did the College Credit Plus program, which is a program offered through the state of Ohio where basically, I think from like 7th grade onto 12th grade, as long as you can apply and get into a public college just within Ohio, the state of Ohio will pay for you to go. So through that program, you earned like
2 degrees.
two associate degrees completely free because they pay your tuition and they also pay for your books.
There were 2. I was one of 2 people who graduated in my high school. A lot of us graduated from high school. Let me rephrase that.
Only 2 people graduated.
It
was a bad year.
Me and one of my best friends, we both graduated from college 2 weeks before we graduated from high school.
That's so funny.
And it was like it was really hilarious to us. We were like, we went to our high school graduation, and then they had a special announcement for just us because we were also the first ones who did it from our high school.
That's awesome.
Which was super cool. Yeah. Neither one of us were able to give a speech though, which kind of stunk.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, there were a lot of people that did it at my high school, and I want to do a program, or not a program. I want to do an episode on the program or on any sort of dual credit, just to kind of show people what's out there. But I did do it as well. Didn't get any degrees, but I did get 2 free years of college. And it's completely free. It's the same as getting a full ride scholarship, but you're like 16 when you're taking these classes.
So if anything, I would recommend going in and taking all your generals.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what a lot of people that I knew did. Or if you absolutely know for a fact that you're going to do nursing or whatever, and the college that you're going to offers those classes, and you know it will transfer to the college that you will end up at. Yeah.
I think it's also a good tool this is like not even related to my major, but like I think it's a good tool to go in and experience other majors.
Oh, absolutely.
Take a class, take a class in physics or something like that. And
I took geography and I took like some funny ones, but like while I went to Ohio University Lancaster, which is like a commuter campus branch of Ohio University that was near where I went to school. I went there and I took a women's studies class because, it sounded interesting. It was the last semester of my senior year, so I was like, I might as well take it. And that ended up being my specialization. I'm a journalism major specializing in women's studies. I ended up loving it a lot. So yeah, it's a great way to dip your toes in the water. Like, you can get a head start if you want to, or you can just experience things if you want to.
Like, it's amazing. My brothers are both in it as well.
Yeah. And
my brother he's also graduating with a degree in
that's crazy.
I think it's psychology, but like specialization in he's going to be 18 this fall, and he has not licensed, but he has a certificate that says he's able to be a counselor.
Oh my gosh.
At 18.
That's insane.
And he's going to
school. We're definitely going to have to do an episode on college credit plus.
Yeah, he's going to school for music ed, so like.
Oh yeah. So it
helps.
That's nice. Yeah.
All right. Back on track.
Anyway, back to the major, back to games and animation. So you were talking about, what'd you say, the corollary? Was that the name of the specialization? We have that at OU. Is that the same everywhere else? Is that a common thing?
I don't know, actually. Back where at my old university, for those of you who don't know, I went to Rio Grande, or the University of Rio Grande. It's kind of a community college, but I don't know it's like a private university kind of thing. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't know that it was private.
There's stuff about it that I'm not allowed to say.
Yeah.
Because I don't technically know it.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I believe it's a private university, but it has branch parts of it that are community college. It's strange, but I went there.
Yeah, it looks like there is the University of Rio Grande, and then there's Rio Grande Community College.
Yeah. I went there, and I didn't even know that there was a corollary thing. I just knew there's a thing called double minoring. But a corollary, there's a difference between a corollary and a minor. A corollary is like taking 2 minors and then splitting them so you don't take the full amount of classes.
Right.
So like,
okay, yeah.
You need 21 credit hours in like 2 separate fields that aren't your major, but the 2 but just a certain amount of them have to be at 3,000 level or above. So like you can take all of the classes being in like English, and then one class at the 3,000 level being in women, gender, sexuality studies, or something like that, and that would still count as a corollary. You only take one class in the WGSS, but that still counts as your corollary.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I bet it wouldn't hurt to have a specialization, like whatever university you guys decide to go to, even if it's like not required. So what, like in your personal experience, could you say if there were any like specific specializations that would be like beneficial?
Yeah. So the way I'm thinking of like specialization is like, you mean like in the major itself, or like to like go with it?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking going with it, but we can do
within the major.
Yeah, we can do both.
Okay. So within the major, a big hot topic right now is virtual reality and VR.
Oh, really?
VR production, audio, spatial audio, that kind of stuff. And I think that's a really big thing to like get into now, because it's so undeveloped that
it's on the cutting edge.
It's on the cutting edge
now.
of things that are going to be happening. I took a class here. I was in VR production in the spring, and then the year before I was in what was it? It was another VR based class, but it was like just learning about VR and stuff like that, and it was a lot of fun. I made VR projects. I've made 3D video and stuff like that. You put on the headset and you turn around, and we did a LARP video, actually, a live action role playing video. So you like put on the headset and you would like see fighting all around you and stuff like that.
Oh,
and
really?
We did really bad special effects for it. It was a lot of fun. But it's like every so often, like every like 2 months, there's new equipment coming out. So like there's new stuff to learn every single. It was a lot of fun. Like we started
the Wild West of technology.
Yeah, like there was like we started out learning on like a certain camera, and then halfway through the semester, that camera was obsolete.
Oh God.
Because like that's how fast it's like it's developing. So like that's, I think, is a hot specialization for like in the major kind of thing, but outside the major, things to go along with the major, marketing. You need to be able to market your product and stuff like that, but you also need to market yourself.
Absolutely. And I think this goes for anybody of any major. Like genuinely, like I am a journalism major, and like part of my education was marketing, because like there's an element of like PR in my major. But I took a marketing class, and it was probably one of the best classes that I've taken, genuinely. And like you do learn how to market yourself. You learn how to like tell your employers like, here's why I'm great. Like maybe they're more qualified. Like we said earlier,
A, personality, B.
Yeah.
I'm like, I might not be the best at this, but I am a really good team player.
Exactly. And like understanding your strengths, things that you like don't even think about. So like if you're an empathetic person, like exactly. Like if you're an empathetic person, that like is a huge advantage, actually. And like you may not even think of it as anything other than like, oh, that's just kind of like how I am.
But like in like a team setting, you need to be able to understand, you know, this person is under a lot of stress. We could like maybe break up their work and help them. And the person that is like willing to help other people is the person who everybody's going to want to have on their team, because you're empathetic, you understand, and that's a big skill to have. But going along with marketing, advertising is also like it kind of goes along with that advertising. I think another thing that is really good to have is communication. Like, that is actually my double major, is communication studies. Yeah. So I think it supplements the games animation thing very, very well, because you learn not only how to communicate you as like an artist or as a designer and stuff like that, but also like the product and how to communicate that to other people, and communicating with other teams and stuff like that. One of the big things that they teach here is you should take a class in like music, and you should take a class in English, and you should take a class in screenwriting and stuff like that, because it makes you well-rounded, and it lets you understand, hey, I'm creating this game. I need music that is eerie and blah, 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 but could you make it in like an E minor key or something like that? You need to be able to communicate. You can understand all the different things that are happening, and
Yeah.
be able to that you need to be able to do like take a class on Photoshop or
Mhm.
something like that, and talk to the art team and be like, I like this, but can you make it like vector, that way it like doesn't scale wonky whenever you're scaling it and stuff like that. You need to be able to be well rounded. What else would be a good supplement for the major? I think games animation. If you're more into the art stuff, definitely go in like an art background, so like a minor in studio art or something
Mhm.
like that. I know some people who their speciality in games animation, world building, world design. They went in and took interior architecture classes.
Interesting.
So like learned
I
how
would
to,
have never thought of that.
yeah, they learned how to like build houses and stuff,
Yeah.
like the insides of places, because you never think about it, but playing games like I think Call of Duty and stuff like that, there's like some of it takes place inside buildings, and
Right.
if it doesn't look like an actual building, it's not going to feel
Right.
realistic.
Interesting. I would have never thought of that.
Yeah, I know a couple of people who have taken geography, maybe. Is it? Yeah, geography. They've taken like some natural sciences classes to learn
Right.
how to like make leaves and grass accurate
Oh my
to
God.
like to like locations. Stuff like
This
that.
is so in depth. I had
Yeah.
like no idea.
Like I know somebody who like they took a marine biology class because they were like making a game that was focused underwater, and so like they learned how to like make the water realistic and how to
Mhm.
like make the ecosystems and stuff. It was like a zoo game that they were making, and they wanted to make the
Mhm.
ecosystems as realistic as possible. And
Yeah.
they took classes like about animals and like marine stuff. And there was another guy, and like there's this thing that you can do here at OU called Bachelor of Specialized Studies,
Mhm.
where you make your own major basically. And he was in the games animation programs because he was smashing games and animation with I think it was zoology and stuff like that, because his specialization is he wanted to make games and stuff like that, but he wanted to be like the artist who focused on like monster creation and stuff like that.
Ooh.
So he was taking classes in games animation, zoology, biology, and like what is it, like the study of anatomy. He was taking
Yeah.
anatomy, so he could learn how like the muscles worked, how the bone structures
Really?
worked, so he could make his own bone structures, his
Oh my
own
gosh.
musculatures and stuff like that. And
That only elevates you as an artist.
like I'm pretty sure I don't know where he's at now, but I'm pretty sure it's very far away from Ohio.
Very doing something great.
hmm
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that actually just raised a question. We're kind of going off of the little section that I'm in right now in my
Mhm.
head, but you just reminded me. As far as like getting a job,
hmm
can you get a job anywhere, or should you move to certain places?
So there is definite more. There's more of a demand in like bigger cities.
Right.
I think the hot spots that I know of are Los Angeles,
Mhm.
New York, and Austin, Texas. They're like those.
Austin, Texas?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Austin, Texas, and I think like another one in the U.S. is Seattle. Washington.
Okay.
They're, like,
Interesting.
They're bigger cities.
The bigger cities.
But another big contender, like if you're not necessarily into like the gaming portion or like the games portion of the games animation, but you're like interested in the animating portion,
Mhm.
another good place to look at is Toronto, Canada.
Interesting.
But you can get a job practically anywhere. There's a couple game studios here in Ohio, in Columbus,
Mhm.
that I've talked to a couple people who like have the companies up there and thought about working there, but
Yeah.
I want to leave Ohio, so it's better
Yeah.
for me to.
So it's probably unrealistic for someone who comes from a small town and wants to stay in their small town.
Yeah,
In rural Ohio, that.
you could theoretically work from the home. I know a couple of people who
Right.
do. However,
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
But how the thing there's actually a game design studio in Athens, but
Okay.
yeah, I applied for an internship there, but my stuff wouldn't send, so like
Right. So
was-
it just didn't work out.
it just didn't work out. But
Mhm.
I think there actually might be two here in Athens now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But there are a couple in Columbus, but I know a couple of people who work from the home. The thing about that they have recommended is you probably should go out and get a job somewhere else first, because
Right.
you're not going to be as credible
Mm-hmm.
unless you are in like you need to be where the stuff is happening.
Right.
And like my personal takeaway from like what I've heard and what I've learned from other people who aren't in the major but who have come to talk to people who are like in like the in the workforce now,
Mm-hmm.
they say that you need to be where the stuff is happening first, because if you are in Little Athens, Ohio, And in Los Angeles, that's where like all of the game, I don't know if it's in Los Angeles, but like the game developers conference and stuff like that is happening. You're going to miss out on it, and you're going to miss out on what's happening. You're going to miss out on, what's coming, what people are working on, and you're only going to be able to hear about it after it's already out.
Right. And I think there's a value in like going into the workplace and seeing how other people work and trying to like pick up from kind of their strategies instead of just reinforcing your own ways.
But like to restate, I think it's possible to stay in like smaller places like Ohio, but
you have to be willing to relocate.
Yeah, you have to be willing. You can't just be like, I'm gonna stay in Ohio forever.
Right.
Kind of.
Or not just Ohio. Well, Oregon, Maine, any of them.
Let's not stay in New Hampshire.
Let's not. No one stay in New Hampshire.
Leave, please.
Okay, so actually earlier you mentioned internships. So going back to like the requirements for the major, are you required to have an internship for your major?
Nope. You're not required to have an internship. I think you should be. Yeah. But you're not required to have an internship, but if you get one, you can use it to count as credit.
Right. That's like, for anybody who's unfamiliar with what an internship is, which I fully was not familiar with what an internship was. I like thought from TV, I was like, an intern gets coffee, and that's what they do. Yeah. But it's essentially, an internship is like, typically it's for college kids. It's not just relegated to college kids, but it's basically hands-on work that's temporary. Yeah. So right now I have like a marketing and communications internship in a radio station in Columbus, and it's only going to be 3 months, and I'm getting college credit for it. And usually it's unpaid, sometimes it's paid, sometimes you get a stipend, which is like a lump sum of cash at the end of
which
whatever.
Is great. With like the games animation program, you are not required to. They encourage you to get one. But honestly, the resources that they give you here are not as what's the word I'm looking for? Not as accessible as you would as I would like. Like I didn't know about any internships that were happening here until junior year, and those internships are very selective too. Right. And so you only hear about them if like the professor likes you. So like that's the ones here at the university. The other ones you have to find on your own. There are good professors here and stuff like that, but it's really hard to find somebody who will vouch for you. Right. Because there's always somebody going to be better than you. Right. Kind of thing. And it's just really hard to get your foot in the door. But once you get your foot in the door, it's super simple. Yeah. But
so how would you suggest somebody get their foot in the door?
Okay, so this is a more general, any college class ever thing kind of thing. Right. Sit in the front of the classroom, take good notes, make yourself known to the professor. Not be friends with the professor, but like, make sure they know your name and you know their name. Yeah,
have a good relationship there.
I would say get to almost a first name basis, kind of. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like
I've gotten to a first name basis before.
Yes.
I never used the first name basis, but I could if I wanted to. And it's been beneficial.
Me Karen kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like most of the classes I'm in now, that's how I am with a lot of my professors. So the people who know who you are the people who are more likely to help get you where you want to be.
Yeah, they're more likely to mention your name to their colleagues. Exactly. They're more likely to think of you when an opportunity comes up.
I have, where I'm a double major, I have 2 academic advisors. Both of them know me. We are on first name bases. We know each other, kind of.
Right.
And they're kind of separate, but in the same field of media arts studies, communication, that kind of the College of Communication. And they talk about me to other people in the major because they know where I want to go. Yeah. And they've connected me with people and stuff like that. So not only make yourself known, make good impressions and stuff like that, but also make your work stand out as well. So there is an artist, I cannot for the life of me remember her name because I am bad with names. One of the things that are like, if you're going into the animation kind of stuff, you want to have like walk cycles of characters to show how your characters are, blah, 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 blah. Instead of doing a basic walk cycle, she did an eagle flying and like kind of hopping around.
Oh, interesting.
And which is still, it shows that she can do the walk cycle
Versatility.
and stuff like that. But it also shows that she can do things that can fly.
Yeah.
It shows that she can do animals, and it shows that she doesn't think inside the box. She thinks way outside of it. And like, so make yourself. Is that noticeable? Is that the word I'm looking for?
Noticeable, different, noteworthy.
Make yourself stand out.
Yeah.
So like, make your work stand out. Don't just do what is expected of you. Go above and beyond.
Go above and beyond.
Always, because that's the person that's going to get noticed. And that's how you land internships and jobs.
And with that, ask questions. Like, even if
it's a dumb question,
come up with a question, because that makes a difference. Like, also when you're like being interviewed for a job, always ask a question.
Yes,
even if it's like, so what's your favorite part of it? Like, asking that question, just showing interest, because obviously if you're majoring in this, if you're studying this, you're interested, but you want to go above and beyond, and you want to talk to these people because they have all the knowledge in the world to offer you. Like,
one of the things I'm actually in a class right now called interviewing, and one of the things that we've talked about is you always talk about your skills and stuff like that, no matter like, even if it's for like a college application for college, the major program, blah, 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 or a job, always state your skills, blah, 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 and at the end ask them a question. So like, the question would that I've recently asked in one of my things that we had to do was knowing like about my skills and what I have telling you, where do you think this kind of thing would fit in your thing? Like, ask them how you would fit with their company, or how you would fit. One. Yeah, like one of the things one of the other things that I've learned is like asking questions. There are some questions you want to avoid though. Like, that's where I'm getting. You don't want to ask, what did you have for dinner?
Right. Like, dumb questions like that. Make sure it like pertains.
Yeah, make it relative, because you want to sound personable, but you don't want to sound so personable that you're an airhead kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. So that was internships. Let's see. Any other like out of class requirements as far as like classes go?
I mean, other than like your general education classes, you're not really. I think there are some that are I don't really think that there is anything other than your core classes. Most core classes actually require you to have a major or a foreign language. You don't need one for games animation.
Really?
Because
I'm jealous.
I don't have to take a foreign language, which I think is really dumb.
Yeah.
And you should have to take a foreign language because,
really
melting pot of.
That's fair.
Not only is like, in America sense, are we a melting pot of like all the different cultures and stuff, but the games animation thing, you're making a product that is most likely going to go to different countries.
Right. So you might have to be able to like
translate.
Yeah, translate and understand like the nuances of how language works and how things don't always translate, or how
and like saying something here in America is offensive in other languages.
Exactly.
Like, if you have a character that curses a lot, I know other countries are like, no, that is not, we can't do that. And so being able to not only communicate about your game, this goes back to the communication, not only being able to communicate what is popular and stuff like that in your home country and stuff, in your native tongue, but also being able to talk about your game or your product to people in like a different location. So like, being able to like, one of the things that people do is like international game, there's international game, what are they called? Conventions and stuff like that, where people go and showcase their games. So there's like the game dev conference. I think it's in San Francisco every year, but I'm not 100% sure. But then after that, there's other places like I think one of the people that I've talked to, their game is being shown in, I think maybe India or something like that right now, and they never took Indian. They don't know how to speak Indian and stuff like that, or Hindu and stuff like that. So they have a translator there, and they have to have all this stuff translated in a different language. Just an
extra step.
But being able to, understand kind of like the nuances of other places allows you to be more engaging and talk about your product somewhere else. Yeah. So I think it should be a requirement that you like take a language and also courses that expose you to other cultures. Yeah. Kind of thing.
Yeah. And again, I would say that for most majors, any like communication or media based majors, especially, that's very important.
I would also argue education.
Education as well. Any major.
Any major.
Any major.
Take a foreign language,
Just
kids.
take a foreign language. See, I was surprised coming into college that you had to take a foreign language because I took like 3 years in high school, I think. And we were told in high school, like, yeah, you're going to take this now so you won't have to take it
Yeah.
in college.
I took 3 years of French.
Yeah.
And
I thought I wouldn't have to take it when I got here. And I was like super bummed when I realized that I had to. But after taking it, I was like, okay, this is pretty beneficial. Because, like, you know, in high school, when you're learning Spanish, you don't always have a professor that's from Spain. But I had an instructor that was from Spain this past semester when I was taking my last semester of Spanish.
I was lucky.
And it was really awesome.
My high school, I was lucky. My French teacher went to OU.
Oh,
so like, which is you know where we're at now. So she learned at the university that I'm at.
Yeah.
So she learned from like the French professor that she had is still here.
Oh, really?
So like the way that they teach is the
That's
same.
So funny.
And it's I love it.
Yeah, I bet they had similar teaching styles.
They did.
That would have been nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now that we've talked about end game, we've talked about what's expected of you once you're here. So the listeners are also they wanna major in games and animation. So what should they have in their little tool belt to get accepted to any games and animation program?
For me, here, because I can only speak to my own experiences. Here, I actually didn't even have to have a portfolio.
Really?
Yeah. We had to have like a Celio portfolio, but that's kind of gone now.
Celio, that's like a website, right?
Yeah. But like the support with the university is gone now. So
yeah, because it was like a website where you could create. It was like kind of like a resume or like a portfolio.
So you could put like
and it had like a tie to our university. So a lot of people were encouraged to do that. I haven't seen it in a while though.
Oh well, I think last month it was like completely cut. Like they're done with the university because they're going to Handshake now. I think so it's called.
Oh yeah, Handshake's a really handy app.
I've never used it.
Yeah,
but
I really enjoyed it a lot. That's how I got the internship that I'm at right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't know much about Handshake, but with Celio, how it worked was in the pre-media arts and studies like section of the major, all the classes that you took made you use Celio. So all of the stuff that you put on your resume and your application, you had to link your Celio profile,
right?
And they had to go through and look at all your stuff. But one of the classes that they have here is it was media and the creative process, and it made you do projects from every part of the College of Communication.
Really?
So like, we had to do an animation project, we had to do an audio project, we had to do a video project, we had to do a modeling project. The only thing that it didn't have was coding and games, and I'm like, why? But which is whatever. But
that's another story.
we had to do screenwriting, and we had to do like storytelling, writing. We had to do a journalism piece.
Yeah.
And so we had to show before you applied for like the actual major, like the second round of applying.
Yeah.
That you could do things.
Yeah.
Of the thing you wanted to do, but going into it. I believe I had to write an essay. Yeah. And that was about it.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was just an essay of why.
Is it like that at other places? No. Okay.
Other universities, to my knowledge, you have to submit a portfolio of your pieces or your knowledge and stuff like projects you've worked on. And stuff
so
like
what would be in their portfolio?
Games, levels, game design. Levels, stuff like that. So
do they have to have experience before actually applying to these programs?
Not in the professional sense.
Right.
So
more like
stuff I've learned on my own, or like that I learned in high school kind of thing. So you need to be able to show that you have an interest and that you have some kind of talent or skill with it. So you need to have a portfolio. If you're more into like the animation side, you need an art portfolio. You need some walking cycles. You need to kind of come in, not being like knowing everything, but having a basis. Right. You need to have like a basis of motion and stuff like that. And even if it's not required at the university that you're looking into, I think that is the skill that you need to come in having because it'll make learning the things and being susceptible to like sponging up all of the information so much better because you know the basics, right? And it allows you to like perfect it. So maybe not necessarily for going for a high university. Basically, coming into it, you need to be ready to learn all the things, but you don't have to have it as like,
right.
as coming in. Like coming
it's
in,
a little bit more approachable here.
Coming into like the games animation program here, I had zero experience creating a game. I had
Right.
all I've ever had was art experience,
Mm-hmm.
and I still got into a games animation program.
Right. So there are some, like, I want to make sure the audience knows that if they do want to major in this, they don't have to have any, like, wild experience. If they do have wild experience, they have opportunities. But if they don't have wild experience, they have
still have opportunities.
Yeah. So it just kind of depends on what program,
And
what
where.
school, where, all those things.
Like, different states are different, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if there was, like, go to the other OU, Oklahoma University, if they have this
The U of O.
If they still have a games animation program, there's no guarantee it's going to be the same exact one as here.
Mm-hmm.
And I can almost guarantee it won't be the same.
Right.
Like, Ohio State has an animation program that helps partner students with DreamWorks.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
So, like, different universities, different opportunities.
Yeah.
So look at your options, and typically on the website, it'll tell you what you need for application.
Mm-hmm.
I just only know about here because that's where I am.
Right. So you said about having that basis of information.
Mm-hmm.
How can somebody do that on their own?
Like, get the information?
Yeah. How do they start learning on their own?
YouTube.
YouTube?
That's where I learned.
Yeah.
I learned a lot. Like, that's where I supplemented what I know is YouTube.
Mm-hmm. So where do you start there?
Like how to start on YouTube.
Well, I mean, like, where do you start? Like, what's the first thing that you go to learn when you're learning these things?
For me, I went to Google. I was like, how to games animate.
First step, Google.
Like I would like, actually I take that back. It was Google, but the first thing I ever looked up is the salary.
The salary. That's fair. That's what a lot of people go to first. I mean, that's a fair.
If you know me in real life, which probably the people listening do not,
yeah.
I like to live my life very champagne budget, champagne taste. So, like, kind of ritzy, kind of
right.
And so
you like nice things.
And I need for what I wanted to do something where I'm still gonna have fun and be able to, like, love what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But also be able to
but
pay
also
for the
champagne.
things, but also pay for the things that I want, and be a little bit frivolous and be able to spend money. So that's why I wanted to go into games animation, because it's not like the art, the salary of somebody who is like a painter. They work like on a painting and then wait for things to happen.
Right.
I needed to be able to do something creative that had immediate turnaround.
Right.
And so that's why I went into this major. So then after I found this major, I decided, okay, well, how do I do that? So I went to Google and I was like, what are the programs that people are using? And so that's when I learned about Unity and Unreal Engine. And so I played games that were made in both of those to see how they were played. And then I was like, okay, well, how do these get made? So then I went to YouTube and I was like, how to make game on Unity, because Unity has a free student edition. I don't know anything. I don't know if Unreal Engine does or not.
Yeah.
I have free student edition of Unity, which if you're into games animation and that kind of stuff, I recommend looking into, like, before you get to college. But not knowing that, I didn't know anything about like actually playing in Unity and making games in Unity, like structural wise, like teaching wise and learning about it until this year. So, and I'm a senior. So
yeah. Things are flexible.
Things are very flexible, but knowing about it and, like, having just, like, a little bit of experience of knowing where things are and how to access tools and such is a
huge advantage.
But I YouTubed how to make a game, or, like, what are simple things and stuff like that. And even when I didn't have access to a computer that could handle doing that kind of stuff, I wrote it down.
Right.
So, like, you
can always just watch and learn, and you don't have to apply it immediately.
Exactly.
You can just kind of, like, watch.
You can watch, you can learn, I would recommend putting it in, like, a bookmark, like, playlist.
Right.
And, like, making your own playlist of things that you're interested in. And then Unity has a website that you can go in and look at, like, their entire user's manual and type in things that, like, how do I make this happen in a game? And,
really?
And it'll show you how to do it.
Oh, that's awesome that those resources are out there.
And, like, if you have Unity, there's, like, a command that you can, hit, I think, 2 buttons at a time. You press them, and it opens up that manual for you on in your browser, which is great. Or like you can hit a button and click on something in Unity, and it opens up the manual and tells you what it does, which is great. Like everything, learning this kind of stuff is not simple. I don't want to say it's simple,
right?
But there's such a low barrier to entry,
and that's not what I would think.
Yeah, like you think it's super technical and you need to be good at like math and all this kind of crap to like design. Like if you're gonna go like 30 feet this way, what does it translate to in a game?
Right.
No, it calculates it for you.
Really?
Like the movement, like
that's not what I would expect at all.
The only thing, like with like a game that I made here recently, there was I had to make a rolling ball kind of thing, and like it goes around and collects stuff. And in that game, there's just a code that you put in, and it puts in the interface of Unity. It creates a slider, so you can just adjust the speed on your own. You don't have to go in and type things. You can just slide where you want the speed to be, or you can type. You can just type like, I want it to go at a unit of 5 every whatever, and it moves that speed for you. And it calculates gravity for you. You don't have to go in and calculate your own gravity. It's great. Like all this stuff.
I would have never thought of gravity. You're dropping a lot of bombs on me right now.
It's not like a lot of it's not a lot of learning, but it is a lot of learning kind of thing. I don't know how to explain it. I have like a resource manual that I made in like 9th grade. No, not 9th grade. Probably more like 11th grade. Of just things that I wrote down that I was learning and stuff like that. I actually recently found it. It's like one of those composition books. It wasn't even like the spiral notebooks. It was
right.
One of the composition books, and it was just like a bunch of stuff written down that I had found out about the major and stuff like that. And one of the very first things at the top was, I want to be creative, and so and then all this kind of stuff about it. And the internet's your best friend. Like full circle, internet's your best friend. Just search if you're interested in it. Search, games and simple games. Search like games expos and stuff like that. Go to events, and that's how you learn about things and make connections.
Are there a lot of events like across the country, or do you have to travel for that?
There's a couple across the country. I know here we have the Business of Games Summit, which talks about
at Ohio University for any of our OU listeners.
Which talks about like the stuff that happens in games, and one of the things I'm really interested in is esports. So like competitive gameplay and stuff like that for like gaming as a spectator sport. So like gaming as like a football game kind of thing.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And Twitch streaming and stuff like that. And we've talked about that. But one of the things that we had here, we had people who are on like competitive esports teams come in and talk about their experience playing the game, but being like in like esports. And that's something that if you're going into the games animation program, you wouldn't necessarily think about. But there's a girl in our program who she's an amazing animator, an amazing programmer, an amazing like artist and stuff. She doesn't want to do that. She wants to be an esports, what do they call it? Like an MC kind of thing.
What? Okay, yeah.
So she wants to go to like the esports programs and talk about the game, but going to do that, having a background of knowing how that game was made, how the assets work, how stuff is calculated is a huge advantage. Like going into like any program that is media based, but having a background of like games, animation, media kind of thing gives you a huge advantage because you can talk about the stuff. Yeah. Which you wouldn't think coming into the major. I don't know if that answered your question or
not. No, yeah, it definitely it answered
more than that.
It answered a lot of my questions. So having kind of self-taught a little bit going in to get accepted into your program, but what if you don't want to go to college? Is this something that you can do completely on your own?
Yeah.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's a person who I know. They went to college, but they didn't go for like games animation. They just went for like graphic design and stuff like that. But they make freelance games. That's what they do. They make games on their own, and they publish them by themselves. And you can like buy their games for like iPhone for 99 cents. But like a lot of people buy them, and they make money. Going to a university is great. Having a degree is great, but they're not necessary. Like
it's not.
A degree doesn't equal quality.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. It all depends on the person.
In any field.
In any field. And like what drives me nuts is a lot of people think that degrees are job receipts. They're like, here, I have this paper, please hire me. And like to a certain degree it does do that, but if you want to learn something to get a job, you could go to a trade school.
Yeah.
That's fine. You
Also,
go to university to get like a certain type of education, and that's what it is. It's an education. You're doing it to educate yourself. You're doing it to, broaden your horizons in all of these different ways, and you need to look at it like that. And if people looked at it like that, I feel like a lot less people would be going to college.
You need to look at it like, do I have to have this information to be successful in it?
Right.
And for the games animation program, it helps, but there are people who come into the major knowing everything and are just wasting money.
Right.
Or
just to say that they did it.
Yeah. Like, for me, like, I don't know, like, if anybody else has this experience, but I came to college because I wanted higher education, blah, 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 because I was told, like, by my parents, and that's stuff that I needed to do. My dad went to college and dropped out.
Yeah.
And my mom didn't finish her her bachelor's degree until I think I was in middle school and stuff like that. And so I grew up learning that education is really, really important, and I think it is for me, but I don't think it's important for every major or for everything that you want to do. My little brother, he wants to go to school to be a welder. That's what he wants to be, a welder, or trade school. But my mom told him that he needs to do some, like, he's doing College Credit Plus right now. He's going to be a sophomore, and he's taking business classes.
Which is fantastic.
Because it's
again, for any major.
But it supplements what he wants to do. He wants to be a welder, but he's taking business classes, so he knows, like, how
welding is a business.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think going to a university or a college, and going to a community college, is also a great option too. You don't have to go to an Ivy League school. You can go to community college, get a degree, because
And honestly, like I mentioned earlier, I went to Ohio University Lancaster for 2 years. A lot of people where I come from, some people will go there for 2 years, like out of high school 2 years, and then come down here to main campus the other 2 years. It's a great way of like getting rid of your general education requirements just for like much, much cheaper. And on top of that, like, if you can get your major at the community college level, which is like the only drawback is like they don't have quite the breadth of stuff, but if you can, I would encourage it.
It's I would
encourage it.
It's going to be cheaper. Not only is it going to be cheaper, what's the word I'm looking for? The quality of education.
It's the same
because it's at the standard of that university. If you're going to like a branch campus of a university,
their Ohio University degree is the same as my Ohio University degree.
Exactly.
It doesn't say Ohio University Lancaster, therefore it's watered down. Like that, no.
Like, where I went to, my first university, I went to, Rio Grande, and I went to the MacArthur campus, which is in my hometown. Like, I walked there. Yeah. And stuff like that. And then I went to main campus, and I graduated with degrees from Rio Grande, not Rio Grande MacArthur Center. So
it's a great option. I think there's like a stigma around it that I don't really understand. And I know it sounds weird coming from a bunch of kids that are going to like a main campus to be like, yeah, community college is great. But like, if journalism was offered at like community college,
I would take it.
Yeah, if all of these the one huge benefit to going to like a main campus is the different extracurricular opportunities.
Well, that, and you're exposed to more people.
Yeah, exactly. So
like, one of the things, it's not necessarily, well, I guess it is major related. I've met people in my major who are doing amazing things. We've become friends, and like, they know my skill set. So like, if they need somebody who is my skill set, we're friends. They'll call me or they'll text me, and they're like, hey, could you make this thing for me? My skill sets aren't necessarily the best in making a game or animating, but I think I'm a pretty great graphic designer. Yeah. And so I've designed logos for tons of games. Yeah. Well, I've done logos for a bunch of games. I'm learning a lot of social media skills and stuff like that right now, because with communication. But they know that I've taken these communication stuff after being in the games animation program, so they know that I can relate my communication skills to the gaming industry. Yeah. And they're like, hey, can you help with this thing? And I'm like, sure, you do this kind of campaign, or I recommend going on Twitter, or maybe doing a Twitch live stream or a Kickstarter, that kind of stuff. And they're like, great, that's awesome. And like, I've been like, not necessarily a social media manager, but I've just been like the person who they ask questions and stuff, and they know that I'm good at this kind of stuff. So I'm not the best at what I do, but I'm original, like kind of, you know what I mean? I'm a unique little thing in a pool of other unique things.
Right.
And that's what I think is great about any university or program or job, anything. Nobody's going to be the same, but everybody is there for
the same reason.
Kind of the same reason. They want to make things.
Yeah.
They want to be creative.
And with that, how do you know that this field is right for you?
So with this is kind of a loaded question for me specifically, because going into the games animation program, I loved it, but that's how I realized it wasn't exactly for me. Like I love being a games person, and I thought going into it, my biggest inspiration was How to Train Your Dragon, because that movie and that series of movies is able to create emotions, and that's something I wanted to be an animator who put emotions and made people feel things and brought about social change. That's what I wanted to do. And coming into the program, I realized that my skill set wasn't necessarily the best for that, but my skill set was best for supplementing somebody else to be able to do that.
Right.
And that's how I came to the conclusion that I wanted to be a teacher. Like I wanted to be a professor, because I don't have the best skills at doing it, but I do have the skills that could help set other people up for the success to help my goal come to life, kind of thing. So honestly, trying it out, doing it, giving it time, seeing if you like it, because being your first year at the university, you're not going to be exposed to absolutely everything in the major. You're not going to be exposed to I wasn't exposed to 3D modeling and 3D animating until my second year in the program.
Right.
Like, not second year in the university, but in the program. So, like, I think it was spring semester of my sophomore year. I was my very first. So it was like kind of the second year at university, but you know what I mean. And so yeah, I don't believe that like creating the games and stuff like that is necessarily for me anymore. But I still love it. I could do it, kind of thing. It's just not what I want to do long term. But going into the major, learning about it on your own, taking classes in it before you absolutely decide. Come into the university undecided. Like that is a thing you can do.
Absolutely.
Come in as undecided arts and sciences or undecided engineering or anything like that. You come in. I talk with my hands a lot. Sorry. Like if this was a video, I'd be smacking people. But come into the university with an open mind.
Yeah.
Be willing to change if that's not like, I want to make this game. I want to be a games person. Coming into the university open-minded is like, I like that, but it's not where my passion lies,
right,
kind of thing. And be willing to change. That's what I was. I was willing to change, and
don't dig yourself into a hole too early, because if you change your mind, because like the whole premise of the podcast is like there's so much out there that like we just don't know and we don't experience firsthand. So like once you come here and you start taking these classes, you kind of get distracted, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much here.
I still have second guesses of being a high school teacher, like
right.
And I graduate in the spring next year. So, like...
Oh, my God. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just all over the place right now. But,
it's good that you have opportunity. I think that's, like, as much as it drives us nuts to not really know what's going on, I think it's a blessing to have this opportunity.
And it's also, if you know that that's what you want to do, that is perfectly okay as well. Like, if you come into the university like, I want to do games, and that is what I'm going to do. I love it, and I'm going to do it. Then do it.
Right.
Like, then that's good for you. Like, there is so much opportunity, and that's what I think is great about this university in particular, but also like what you're doing is with this podcast is they're both very good for exposure. They teach you to be open. They teach you, like, I came here because it's away from home. One. I can learn experiences that I don't get in rural Ohio. I mean, we're still in rural Ohio, but like,
but we're in like a little tiny city.
Yeah, it's like a tiny city, and where I'm from, everybody's like closed-minded, that kind of stuff. Like,
right.
Everybody goes on to do the same thing.
Right.
And there are people in my class who we all left because we didn't want that. We didn't.
Right.
And so I think coming to a university or moving away and stuff like that, and going to a university that has a lot of classes and a lot of majors and a lot of people helps expose you to things that you wouldn't normally be exposed to. And
right.
And that's I kind of lost my train of thought.
No, yeah, like
I lost where I was going.
I see exactly where you're going with it. Like,
But
coming here and meeting people from different countries. Like, I didn't plan on meeting people from different countries. Like, I have somebody in my scholars program who's from New Zealand, and I didn't think I'd ever meet somebody from New Zealand, or Turkey or Trinidad.
That I've had here that I wouldn't I never expected that I would ever take in my life, because growing up where I grew up, everybody's the same kind of thing. You know what I mean? But coming here, one of the classes that I took was media in the Muslim world.
Yeah, I've taken I took a class on the Middle East, and it was definitely eye-opening because
there's a film festival over there.
A film festival?
Yeah, there's a film festival in I can't remember it was Burkina Faso, which is I had to do a project in that class about a country, and there's an international film festival where they do a lot of women's films.
Really?
And there's a lot of, it's like the uprising of women in the media industry in like an African country, but they're also like Islamic, and they practice Islam, and I would have never thought to like even look into that because of where I was from.
Yeah,
and
I think the majority of people Max and I had very similar upbringings. We're from similar parts of Ohio, but like there's definitely this picture of what certain people look like, and that's not necessarily anybody's fault, because these are just misconceptions that have just been passed on and passed on and passed on. And once you come here and you learn these things and you take it back and you tell your family, like, people who believe Islam don't think Jesus wasn't real. That's not a thing. Yeah. They absolutely believe in Jesus. He just has a different role. And I remember telling that to somebody in my family, and they were like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah,
because they just had no opportunity to learn these things, like the different nuances of different cultures.
And I guess where I was going with like this whole kind of thing was the majors that you experience at different universities and stuff like that is very similar to experiencing different life experiences.
Absolutely.
Like, and I think
diversity of experience,
diversity of experience, and diversity of like being open-minded, not only in life but in like your university, your major and stuff like that, I think is the biggest key to success.
Absolutely.
And that's how I'm gonna
being a well-rounded worldly person.
Yes. And in any major, games animation, you need to be able to work with everybody.
Yeah.
Open-mindedness. And I think going to university is like your best chance at like learning that kind of stuff, but going full circle, it not necessarily is something you have to learn at a university. So yeah.
Well, I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up. So Max, thank you so much, not only for helping me create this podcast, but for coming on and being our first guest.
I am very happy that you asked me to be here.
All right. So I think that was a great first episode. Do you have any projects that you would like to plug for us?
I would. Actually, the other project that I am working on, your lovely host, Jamie, is on.
Hey.
I run a podcast called the Dorks and Dragons podcast, where we are an actual play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition podcast where we play D&D. We talk about D&D. We also have a show that I am right now calling the Perception Check, which we talk about. It's like a recap episode of what's happened on the previous thing before the next episode comes out, so you can keep up to date if you forget what happens, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But new episodes of that comes out every Monday, and then the Perception Check comes out every Friday. And the Dorks and Dragons podcast, you can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at DragonsDorks. You can follow us on Podbean, which is podcast hosting service. You can also follow us on SoundCloud, though we are migrating from SoundCloud to Podbean. You can also find us on iTunes and Spotify, which is awesome.
It's awesome.
I love it.
Yeah, I'd say if any of the listeners have never dabbled in Dungeons and Dragons at all, don't worry, I haven't either, and I'm on the podcast. I seriously had like never played it, any experience with it at all, until I was like being recorded playing this, and it's actually so much fun. It's not what I expected it to be at all. So, at least giving a listen to the latest episode, it's a lot of fun.
Like, how people have preconceived notions about D&D, like they do about majors, like they do about people.
Yeah.
Nothing of it is what you would think.
It really kind of isn't. Like, it is cheesy, and when you just give into the fact that it's cheesy, it's a lot of fun.
You have fun. Like,
because it's more people based. It's more like the people that are playing and listening to them, having fun, just hanging out.
The way I like to play and the way I like to have my players interact, it's gonna sound kind of cheesy and dumb, but it's a storytelling experience where everybody helps create the story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like. I've never been a dungeon master before. This is my very first time ever being a dungeon master, and I'm recording myself doing it. I'm recording people who have played D&D, who've never played D&D, and we're all learning together.
Yeah.
And we're all helping create this story that we all are invested in in our characters. You have to get in the headspace of your character. I'm playing like 5 million characters because I'm the dungeon master or dungeon daddy, but
the dungeon master is the person that like runs the game.
Yeah,
they like create the story and stuff. It's, I don't know, it's very intricate, and I'm still learning.
If that's something that you're interested in, or maybe want to try, give us a follow, give us a listen, and see what you think. Other than that, I don't have any other projects I'm working on other than I'm a Twitch streamer. But
you're a Twitch streamer. Oh, I don't think I knew that about you.
You didn't know I was a Twitch streamer?
No.
Well, I only stream like once a month because I'm so busy.
Maybe
but
that's it. Maybe that's why.
I've been so busy. But if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitch at Max Doodles with 2 X's.
Ooh, Max Doodles.
Mm-hmm.
Neat. All right. Well, with that, thank you guys so much for listening. I look forward to where we go next. If you have any requests as, what majors, what fields you guys want me to talk about, send us an email. You can find me at themajorpodcast@gmail.com. And right now we're on Twitter at themajorpodcast. We don't have any other social media at the moment, but I imagine the next thing that'll come is Instagram, if you guys want me to. And with that, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll catch you next time.